And as we heard in the previous report, passengers and crew of flight SQ321 experienced rapid changes in gravitational or G-forces. Nadirah Zaidi explains what is a G-force and what passengers might have felt during the turbulence.
Gravitational force is what everyone experiences, pulling them to the ground. This acceleration of gravity is defined as G. The standard gravitational force on Earth is 1G. This sensation is the pull of a person's own weight. But this can change up or down depending on a person's movement.
You go into a lift, okay, on the first floor, and you press the button to go up on a higher floor. In that split moment, you would feel yourself being heavier as the lift is trying to go up. That sensation is more than 1G. Then the other opposite effect would be if you're at the top floor of a building and you go into a lift and you want to go down to a lower floor. In that split moment when the lift door closes and you come down, you feel light again. That's less than 1G.
Scientists say for passengers on board SQ321, the injuries likely occurred when the plane was in negative G.
The G's changed from a positive value to a negative value and then to a positive value again. It just means that the aircraft went up, when it was positive, and then went down when it was negative, and then went up again. So turbulence causes the aircraft to go up and down, and as a result of that, the G sensation of the passenger inside would be fluctuating between positive and negative and positive. But the injuries usually result from the negative Gs because that's when you are hurled out of your seat.
Associate Professor Tan adds, when the aircraft was at positive 1.35 G, passengers would feel heavier on their seats. But when it changed to negative 1.5 G, passengers who are not belted would feel lighter, like they were floating in mid-air.
You need a negative G that is more than your own weight first to lift yourself out, your feet off the ground, right? Because you have your own weight, right? Then you must have at least negative 1 point something. Then it would mean that you are actually being accelerated upwards because you need to have at least negative 1G first to neutralize your own weight, so you will feel weightless. Okay, that means there's no pressure between the soles of your shoes and the ground, and then a bit more than that to accelerate yourself upwards.
He adds, commercial flights typically do not reach dangerous G levels to the point of passengers blacking out, and that means not going beyond 2G. As a comparison, the average G-force on a roller coaster ride can go up to 3 or 4 depending on the speed.
For more analysis, we're joined by independent aviation analyst Alvin Lie. Mr. Lie, what do you make of the timing to release this early report now?
Well, I will say that the preliminary report is very quick because normally it takes a few weeks, a month, but it was not an accident, it was a serious incident, and all the evidences are there. So I respect the swift work of the Singapore investigation.
What's next then for investigators? Would they be conducting interviews with crew and pilots now? And, if so, do we know how long the process is going to take? Do we know how many rounds of interviews? Do we know what they'll be asking? What do they need to know?
Okay, right. The preliminary report actually only explains what happened to the plane and the initial reaction of the crew. But the next steps will be a more detailed investigation, and that will involve the detailed studies of the flight data recorder, the cockpit voice recorder, as well as interviews to the crew, and perhaps also the passengers available, air traffic controllers. This needed to determine whether there was any negligence on the part of the carrier, that's Singapore Airlines, or whether there was any technical issue with the plane, and this will take some time, and the investigators will involve. It's not only Singapore, because the plane was Boeing, that will involve the United States, and also all states which have their citizens on board of that plane will have the rights to access that investigation. So it's going to be a lengthy process, and it may take up to a year.
Well,
That's planned.
speaking of this Federal Aviation Administration or Boeing, the Federal Aviation Administration as well as Boeing, they are involved. You mentioned that. What would they need to know now that they have the data, this early data?
Well, first they will have to open the flight data recorder, and that's going to be a long process because they have to look at the thousands of parameters to make sure that the plane functioning properly? Was the change in G forces really caused by weather, or whether it was caused by mechanical issues? And the final report will determine not only what caused the incident or accident, but also will issue a recommendation. What should be done to prevent the reoccurrence of such incident or accident? And that's going to take some time because, again, there's a lot of data that needs to be examined.
Well, Mr. Lie, we have a response from SIA, so let me read it out for you and our viewers now. Now, Singapore Airlines has issued a statement saying that it acknowledges the investigation findings and is fully cooperating with authorities. The carrier also goes on to say that the safety and well-being of passengers and staff are its top priorities. It's committed to supporting those on board, and this includes covering their medical and hospital expenses, as well as any additional assistance they may need. So, Mr. Lie, obviously everyone's going to be wondering about compensation. And we know that SIA, or we know that Singapore is a signatory of the Warsaw as well as the Montreal Convention. Can you tell us more about this convention?
Okay, the Warsaw Convention is actually the basis of modern I will say contract between the carrier and the passengers. So it's an international convention which regulates the liability of the carrier when accidents happen or there's damage to the luggage or goods. That's the basis. And the Warsaw Convention, signed in 1929, it has evolved, and it has become, in 1999, the Montreal Convention actually more or less like streamlined, because since 1929, the Warsaw Convention, it has gone so much changes. So the Montreal Convention in 1999 established the airline liability in case of death, injury, as well as cost in case of delay, damage, or loss of baggage and cargo. So the Montreal Convention 1999 is designed to be the single universal treaty to govern all airline liability around the world. So that is the issue there. And of course, with the SQ321, the limit of liability of Singapore Airlines is to cover the medical expenses of those injured. And beyond that, it's the airline's goodwill, like repatriation of the injured or the body of the person who died. It's covered by Singapore Airlines. Beyond that, the passengers will have the opportunity to sue the airline for more, but that takes time, and there's a time limit of 2 years since the date of the incident or accident.
Well, Mr. Lie, in situations where injuries, are severe, can a passenger also claim from their travel insurance?
Yes, I always advise my clients to have a personal accident travel insurance, because the travel insurance, the optional travel insurance covers a lot more compensation in terms of flight delays, baggage loss, missed connection, as well as injuries when accidents happen, as well as when we get sick while traveling. Those not covered by the basic airline insurance should be covered by travel insurance. That's why it's always good to have travel insurance. It does not cost much, but for frequent travelers, it's really worth the investment.
All right, many thanks for speaking to us. I've been speaking with independent aviation analyst Alvin Lie.